Rain hammered against the tall windows of the Grand Haven Hotel, turning the city lights into trembling rivers of gold. Inside, beneath chandeliers that dripped crystal like frozen rain, sat Adrian Vale, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and printed in gold on magazine covers. Billionaire, visionary, ruthless, the kind of man who made entire industries kneel with a single decision. Yet tonight, he sat alone at his reserved corner table, a glass of untouched wine before him, his reflection fractured in its crimson surface. He was used to silence. Silence obeyed him. Silence was control, but tonight, it felt heavier than usual, pressing against him like the weight of every deal, every betrayal, every sacrifice that had built his empire. The restaurant was quiet except for the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware. And then came the voice, gentle, polite, with a hint of tired warmth. "Good evening, sir. Are you ready to order?" Adrian looked up. The waitress was young, maybe in her mid-20s. Her dark hair was neatly tied back, her uniform crisp but faded at the edges. There was nothing remarkable about her at first glance, yet her eyes, calm and steady, didn't lower when they met his. Most people's did, hers didn't. He grunted, glancing back at the menu. "Just a steak, medium rare, and make sure it's done properly this time. Last week was a disaster." The woman nodded without flinching. "Of course, sir, I'll make sure it's perfect." Her accent was soft, American, but touched by something else, maybe Eastern European or Mediterranean. It reminded him of a time long before the power, before the suits and shareholders, a time when his mother's lullabies carried that same lilting rhythm. He shook off the thought as quickly as it came. When she left, Adrian checked his phone, scrolling through the numbers that defined his life. Deals, projections, losses, profits, all lines of control. But control had begun to slip. A recent scandal had shaken his company's image. The media called him heartless, his competitors called him finished. The only person who hadn't called at all was his son, Ethan, the boy he'd raised to be strong, only to push away so far that the silence between them now felt irreversible. "Your order, sir," came the voice again. She placed the plate before him, careful, steady, professional. Adrian didn't look up. "You've been working here long?" he asked, half interested, his tone more command than curiosity. "Almost 5 years, she said. 5 years. You must enjoy serving people who think they're better than you." There was a beat of silence, one that stretched too long to be comfortable. Then, calmly, she said, "No, sir. I enjoy serving people who've forgotten how to be kind. It reminds me how not to become them." Adrian's fork froze mid-air. He looked up sharply, his expression unreadable. The waitress met his gaze, neither apologetic nor confrontational, simply honest. And in that honesty, something pricked at him. "What did you say?" he asked quietly. She blinked once. "Nothing rude, I hope." For a moment, Adrian almost smiled. Almost. He dismissed her with a flick of his hand, but her words lingered, circling him like smoke. Forgotten how to be kind. The meal passed in uneasy silence. When the bill came, he tossed a few $100 bills onto the tray, a gesture of power, not generosity. She thanked him, her tone unshaken. As he left, he caught her reflection in the glass door, standing straight, unbroken, while his own figure seemed small beside hers. The next night, Adrian came back. He told himself it was because the food was decent. But when the same waitress appeared again, he realized that wasn't true. He wanted to see what she'd say. Next. "Back again?" she asked lightly, recognizing him. "I like consistency," he replied. "Same order." She smiled faintly. "Consistency can be good, unless it keeps you stuck in the same place." He raised an eyebrow. "You talk like a philosopher for someone serving tables. And you listen like a student for someone who thinks he's already learned everything." Adrian laughed then, the first real laugh in weeks. "You're bold." "Not bold," she said. "Just tired of people mistaking money for meaning." That line stayed with him all night. When he returned again, and again, over the next few weeks, the pattern became routine. He sat at his usual table. She served him. They spoke. About small things at first, then larger ones. The weather, the food, the way people looked when they were pretending not to care. She never asked about his wealth, though she surely knew who he was. Instead, She asked about what made him happy, about what he missed when no one was watching. No one had asked Adrian those questions in years. Her name, he learned, was Sophia. She was working 2 jobs to pay for her younger brother's medical bills. Their parents had died in an accident back home in Croatia, and she'd come to the US chasing a promise that never quite delivered. Yet she smiled easily, treated every customer like they mattered, even when they didn't notice her. One night, as the restaurant emptied and the rain returned to the windows, Adrian stayed behind after closing. He found Sophia cleaning a table, her sleeves rolled up, her hands red from detergent. "Why do you stay?" he asked quietly. "You're educated, smart, you could do more." She looked up, surprised. "Do more? Like what?" "You could build something, run a business, be successful." She straightened. "Success isn't always about building up, sir. Sometimes it's about not breaking down." Adrian looked at her for a long time. He wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. A week later, a crisis hit his company. Stocks plummeted, investors pulled out, and headlines screamed his name in disgrace. Vail Corporation accused of exploitation. His PR team begged him to make a statement, to deny everything. But for the first time, Adrian couldn't. Because deep down, he knew it was true. Somewhere along the line, he'd forgotten kindness. He returned to the restaurant the next evening, hollow-eyed, without his usual entourage. When Sophia saw him, she paused mid-stride, then walked over with quiet understanding. "Rough day?" she asked softly. He almost laughed, but it came out broken. "You could say that. You look like someone who's been told the truth and didn't like hearing it." Adrian met her eyes. "Maybe I have." "Then you're lucky," she said. "Most people live their whole lives without ever hearing it." Her words cut deeper than any headline. Over the next month, Adrian withdrew from public view. He spent more time in that small restaurant than in his skyscraper office. The world outside mocked him, but inside those walls, he found quiet, and something like peace. Sophia spoke to him like an equal, not a fallen king. She told him stories of her brother learning to walk again, of how kindness from strangers had saved their lives more than once. One evening, as she poured him coffee, he asked, "How do you stay kind when life's been so cruel?" She smiled gently. "Because cruelty is contagious, so is kindness. You just have to choose which one you spread." That night, Adrian went home and opened a file he hadn't looked at in years, the one containing his company's first mission statement. It had once read, "To create opportunities for everyone." Somewhere, it had become, "To dominate the market." He didn't recognize the man who had written either version. Weeks passed. The scandal died down, but Adrian didn't return to his old self, because he didn't want to. He sold part of his company, started a foundation for worker welfare, and reinstated benefits that had been cut to maximize profit. The business press called it a strategic rebrand. Adrian knew it was something else entirely, redemption. He returned to the restaurant one last time, this time not in a designer suit, but in a simple jacket. Sophia looked up, surprised to see him. "You look different," she said. "Maybe I finally am." He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter and a check, enough to cover her brother's treatments, her education, and more. "I can't take this," she whispered. "You can," he replied. Because once, a waitress reminded a billionaire of who he was supposed to be. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Vail." "No," he said quietly. "But I owe the world someone like you." He stood, and for a moment, the proud, unshakable billionaire seemed almost human, fragile, grateful. As he turned to leave, Sophia spoke one last time. "Mr. Vail," she said, "do you know why I spoke to you that first night, even though you were rude?" He paused. "Why?" "Because I saw a man hiding behind his own success. And I thought, maybe he just needs someone to tell him the truth." Adrian nodded slowly. "And you were right." When he stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered like new beginnings. For the first time in years, he didn't rush to a car or a meeting. He just stood there, breathing in the wet air, letting it wash him clean. Months later, the restaurant received a letter on elegant paper. It wasn't signed with his company's name, just, from a man who finally listened. The donation built a new wing at the local hospital, the one where Sophia's brother was recovering. And somewhere, in a quiet office overlooking the same city, Adrian Vale watched the sunrise, thinking of a waitress who had once looked him in the eye and told him the truth. Pride had built his empire, but truth had rebuilt his heart. He smiled to himself, whispered under his breath, "Thank you, Sophia," and for the first time in his life, the silence around him didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace.